All right. Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get everybody into the room. We got a minute or two here before we'll get started. Quinn, nice to see you. Jen, good to see you. Eric, Joe, Amy, Megan, anybody with a camera on gets a shout out. So that's just how it goes. Gotta stop this. We'll start this. I got to hit add and do it. There we go. Keep adding people. All right. Hi, everyone. As we continue to add people here, we'll get started in about another minute and we'll kick things off. Loading everything in. So many great faces. Hey, Matt. Hey, Dan. Hello, Mr. Horowitz, Derek, Scott, Lauren, Patrick, Maria, John, Andrew, Danny, Scott. Good to see everybody. We're just getting everybody in, and then Mark is joining us today from Nashville. And so, Mark, we'll get started here in about another minute.
Right.
I know Gary is traveling today, will not be able to join us. Otherwise, I asked him to make some introductions. Mark, I know you guys go back quite some way, but does say hello and send his regards.
Excellent.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're 2 minutes in. I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. I just have a couple quick slides to share before I turn it over to Mark. So, just a couple things that are top of mind. Today, we have invited both our MPB leadership group as well as our basic training bootcamp group together. Before I dive in, just a couple quick reminders. If you haven't had a chance or haven't seen any of our announcements, we've added two new team members to the organization this month. Number one, Brian Blaha. I think Brian has been on some of our calls already. Brian's managing director, spending a lot of his time in the advisory space. He's opening up and running our Chicago office. Brian, I don't know if you want to say hi, say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see so many familiar faces. Happy to have joined the Winding River crew already 2.5 months ago, so it's hard to believe, but I look forward to interacting with you guys if I haven't already, and lots of good things that are happening here at Winding River, and including updating our service offerings and enhancements to the leadership development series that all of you have been a part of. So just continue to look for new updates and look forward to interacting with you on this call and in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. And Rain Evans Roscos, she'll be our new events marketing manager. So you'll get to hear from her a little bit more starting next week. So if you do hear from Rain, please welcome her to our team. Just to hit a few things, and as reminders, we try to keep everybody on mute during the conversation. Feel free to come off at any point to ask questions during that time. I'll be monitoring the chat window. So if any questions do come up for Mark, please put them in there and I'll be able to facilitate them with Mark as we go through this process. Just to highlight our Managing Partner Bootcamp program going into our 20th cohort, our 9th year, launches this October. We have 8 of those 12 seats currently reserved. Really excited to see where things are at for these cohorts. Our current cohort going on, cohort 19, has 12 people in it right now. We're going to see that again for 20 and then again 21 going into 2026. Our basic training bootcamp, we launched that last year officially for new partners. Many of you are here on the call today. Great feedback. Really excited to continue that program. And that is coming up as well during that cohort 3. For those not familiar with that program, we focus on 3 core pillars: managing clients, growing people, and building a practice. It overlaps the same week with MPB, so lots of networking opportunities, and we reserve up to 15 seats for those one-time in-person program. And then the last thing I wanted just to mention before I turn it over to Mark is Winning Ways Conference this year and the alumni reunion. So the reunion takes place November 12th. We kick it off with a cocktail and dinner reception at 6 p.m. at McCormick and Schmidt's. We usually have a guest speaker. Last year was Michael Horowitz. We'll look to some others for this year. We had about 45 people attend that dinner. Dinner's on us. Would love to have you attend. The very next day, we'll kick off with Matt Turlop, our trainer. We'll have a working breakfast for about an hour and a half with some content, and then we'll take a break before Winning Ways kicks off. This year's theme for Winning Ways is all about staying independent, rethinking or challenging the status quo. Many people ask me if PE is of interest or we're part of PE. Can we participate? The answer is absolutely yes. I think ultimately this comes back to controlling your destiny and building the best firm and brand that you possibly can to thrive. We plan to have 2 to 3 panels. One of the panels is focused on alternative opportunities or structures beyond selling your organization to PE or merging up, and that's going to include ESOP, debt leveraging, as well as a minority investment firm. We have 3 firms that have really focused on announcing, staying independently, thriving independently, and hearing about them. And then the third panel is an innovation panel, firms that are building very different, unique, and fast growth models out there today. So we have some really exciting firms to highlight as part of that session. We'll have some other content, one piece more on the psychological aspect and the trust aspect of these conversations and leadership alignment, as well as the good, the bad, and the ugly. So keep everybody updated on that. It's November 13th and 14th. We're limiting it to 150 attendees this year. About 65% typically come back. You'll receive an email here in the near future with more information around that. Mark, that's enough for me. I'm going to turn it over to you. I really do appreciate you joining us today. It's been a couple of years since we've had you. I know I first got to meet you when you were running a Lineal. We've had the opportunity to connect a couple times of the year. I know you and Gary go way back. Really appreciate you having and joining us today. And just for the group, I've asked Mark, he's got some remarks to make here towards the beginning, but then absolutely would love to hear from the audience. We have a chat window open. I did get some questions in advance as well. So Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. You see the slide all right?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I see a number of familiar faces out there, so hello to everyone. And for those I haven't met, look forward to in the near future, hopefully live somewhere along the way. As David mentioned, I've been around the profession for a while, know a lot of folks. I spent 14 years at AICPA before leaving back in 2020 to run another firm association for 5 years, and then coming back January 1 of this year. Spent 12 years in public accounting in Buffalo, New York, 3 years, went to work for a client in political media, which I don't like to talk as much about. Politicians are all crazy, as I've quickly learned in those 3 years. But all that became really what prepared me for this role today. And, so I appreciate every one of those pieces as my background to get me ready, especially for this year. I come in and Barry Melanson, 30 long years as CEO, said, "You're coming in at a great time. There's nothing going on. It's going to be an easy year for you." And then all of a sudden, states start adopting a new old pathway, if you will, for CPA and mobility now, and all the things happening with mobility. And then all of a sudden, this big tax bill. We have state legislation where some states want to just completely eliminate professions. So it's been an interesting 6 months to say the least, but everything that I've had has prepared me for it. And I love this profession, greatest profession in the world. I keep saying it. And so all of these things, while challenging, definitely create opportunity. I think opportunity for all of us as a profession and then individually as well. And so anybody who's seen me present or you've been on any of our town halls, I have a town hall today in a couple of hours. We're going to be going over the latest and greatest of the I'll only have to say this once. The one big beautiful bill, the OBBB, has now been changed. The new name is HR1, much easier to say. So we will be talking about HR1, not to get into too much detail, but really talk about the wins. And so this whole new administration and everything that's happened, this has been the talk of the day. And everything that I keep hearing, I just keep hearing from my lens, the opportunity for us as a profession, for our firms, and we bring consistency, we bring answers to the unknown. That's what we do for our clients, and some level of stability to make our clients feel better about what's coming at them at any given time. So, what better opportunity than now with all of these changes that are happening? And I will say, first and foremost, anybody who's been following along in how tax legislation typically happens, or if you were keeping score, any who have followed the town halls or major firms or council, I have been debating with our head of advocacy, Mark Peterson, from January when I started, and he kept saying we are possible to have one reconciliation bill and tax passed in June or July. And I said, you are crazy. It's going to be a two reconciliation system like it always has been. We're not going to see tax legislation passed until well into the year. And if you look back at 2017, Trump's first administration, when they passed the TCJA back then, that didn't get passed until December 20th and signed into law on December 22nd by President Trump then. It made it into the second reconciliation bill. First reconciliation typically is always, border control, immigration, and defense that you see in that first bill, and to try and bring it all together. And in 2017, the odds were stacked in the Republican Party's favor that it should have been fairly easy to get these things done, and we didn't have tax legislation until late in December. And so now, laser thin margin in both the House and the Senate. It's all it would take is one to kind of go off the rails. And there was threats of it not passing. There was a lot of things that were in this reconciliation bill. So just a lot to debate along the way. And so the question was it going to have success? And you had some bantering, you had some positioning, posturing, if you will, in the House and in the Senate. And so, it didn't look like, to me anyway, in January, but you know what? Never doubt your experts. And Mark Peterson was spot on. And here we are with a passed reconciliation bill that included tax. And so, this is the first time we went back, and I think it was actually 2001 was the last time we've seen tax legislation passed much before November. And so, what an incredible opportunity for the profession this year to be able to do better planning with our clients, have more time to be able to create planning. Now, I've been around in all those years that we had December passage of legislation. Our members were never happy about the fact that it happened so late in the year. It's going to take the tax prep companies, they're going to get delayed in having the tax software ready. Why can't they do this earlier in the year? We need more time to help plan with our clients. Now, believe it or not, I've already talked to some of our tax folks. We are getting complaints in the system that the tax bill has now passed and is going to be right up on top of the fall filing season. And so how am I supposed to plan and still get through the fall filing season with the bill now out there today? And so I said, there's no other time of the year that it is even remotely possible to do it. And so, let's take the gift given to us as a profession and let's really try and take advantage of this. Now, some of the conversations I've had with firms and many of our small practitioners, and we were saying this early on when I kind of get into the issues around the IRS and what's happened at the IRS. And when you look at the fact that, IRS has been through a number of, they had a number of layoffs. Now they've had these early retirements that have taken place after May 15th. They are definitely down a number of people. Now, on top of it, they're going to have to implement this new bill, HR1, and also still be able to support the marketplace with the filing season, the fall filing season that is still ahead of us here in the next couple of months. And so, I've said to members one-on-one, especially, look, the faster you can get your clients in and done, the better, because when it comes time for September and October, there's just going to be a lot of things that are coming at them. And I don't know that you're going to get the support as much as you would get it today. Not even to say that today's support would have been as at the levels that it was at in March or April. We did hear coming out of busy season that levels were consistent with the last few years. And I always say that in private conversations, and we even did a press release on this, that we were talking to the IRS and we were expecting consistent levels of service from the IRS through April 15th. And that was true. Now, I never said they were good. I just said that they were going to be consistent with where they were in the last few years. And so now, as we come out of this, and we've had some discussions with Treasury and with the IRS, and talking about modernization in ways to really try and help advance. And we are involved in those conversations as we go forward. So there's just a lot of things that are going to be happening inside of Treasury, inside of the IRS. I don't think we're going to see all of the support and definitions and everything that they still have to go through to finalize this, because there's all these definitions that need to be created around it. They're still going to need to do that. So, our recommendation has been, you have the initial push of information to your clients to say, here are the big ticket items. They still need further defining. We will get back to you when that happens. But at a minimum, please know that these are the things that may affect you. Now, in some of those, and especially when you look at implementation dates, they are all over the board on the reconciliation bill. And bonus depreciation, I think maybe even the R&D credit. I know the bonus depreciation for sure was retroactive to 2019. So now all of a sudden we have an immediate opportunity to talk to any of our clients that should be able to take advantage of that going back to 2019. And then you have the current dates that won't expire for planning for the 2025 season. And then there are some things that implement or sunset 26 and after that are going to happen. So getting all the timelines, we're working on a document that kind of lays out what all those timelines are. So we're able to we're able to provide that to our member firms, and you're able to have those conversations with your clients as you go forward. So it's here, it's done. We're July. I never expected to be talking about it today. It is, I think, exciting to be able to say it. And we were sending out a number of press releases around it. One of the big things that I think, whether or not you were following how the different bills came about, the House bill as it came out, when we talk about the pass-through entity tax, had significant harm to the profession. In that, in the PTET, they excluded SSTBs, which are basically personal service companies, from being able to deduct the state tax at the entity level, like has been done since the 2017 TCJA. Now, it was the House Ways and Means Committee that defined and actually opined on the fact that they were going to allow it if a state allowed for the state tax to be paid at the entity level, that you could in fact deduct that on your federal return. And to have this exception to only exclude personal service companies like CPAs, dentists, doctors, lawyers, optometrists, all of those different pieces, and to actually say now that we're going to increase taxes in those categories, seemed detrimental to what it was that they were trying to do, but there was a pay for it to that. The last 30 days have been unbelievable, and I'm sure many of you have helped us participate in reaching out to your senators to make it happen, because we knew that House bill, we weren't going to be able to, the train had left the station. We weren't going to be able to get that overturned before they voted on it. So our only option really was to go into the Senate. And we worked incredibly hard. Our DC team, along with the firms, firm advocates, the state societies, everyone together to make sure that the Senate bill removed that particular stipulation, and knowing that that had a greater chance of success to stick that way rather than trying to fix the House bill back to where it was. And so to me, that's the greatest success. Now, some members may never see or understand what the risk point was of what that implication would have been. But the way that we calculated it, it was easily hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars to the profession in state income tax that wouldn't have been deducted. Not to mention the fact, and I realized that we were able to, they kept in the $40,000 deduction on state taxes with the AGI up to 500,000, and then with limitation after that. Not everybody's 500,000 and above. So some of our smaller firms have said, well, that didn't affect me yet. And it's funny how these things have legs. And if that type of legislation would have stayed, who else would have been hurt by it down the road? One of the things that I learned quickly when I moved from Buffalo, New York to Wake Forest, North Carolina, is that if you want to grab a snake, you don't do it by the tail. And anything like this tends to gain tail after a while, because it worked as some of it. Now we could get more pay-fors out of it if we continue on that exclusion and start to incorporate others in that and start to reduce it down. So there will be at some point some administrative change, and they may want to go deeper into the profession around that. And so having that completely eliminated off the table was absolutely vital to the entire profession as we go forward. So that's a huge win. And we've said time and again, and depending on the size of the firm and the number of partners affected by that, for many of the firms that would have been affected by that, we just paid their AICPA and state society dues probably easily for the next 10 years. So feel free to, pony up again, and being a member of AICPA, that's what it's about, right? Is being able to advocate for those different pieces. We don't always win. There are some hard things out there. And, even now talking about the bill in general, we've come out with strong support about the bill being passed and the pieces that are in the bill that we were strongly supportive of. So the PTET and getting that removed, absolutely strongly supportive of it. 529 plans, being able to use 529 money for professional exams and the like, absolutely a fan of that. And there were a number of other provisions, which, by the way, were also bipartisan pieces of legislation that were all standing off kind of on their own, that got incorporated into the bill as part of the overall. So even if you had the Democrats who were going to vote against the entire bill, there were still pieces in the bill that the Democrats were definitely for that were part of that. But it's just the politics and the way that this all happens inside the reconciliation process. So we did come out supportive of the bill. Are there things in the bill we don't like? Absolutely. But from a profession standpoint, we made out okay. And that was the important piece coming out of this. And so, do we still worry about the deficit? Absolutely. Are there other pieces in there that we do worry about? And, the piece from the 3 years of politics that I've had, one of the things that I learned as part of those 3 years of politics is that no bill is ever perfect. No bill will ever generally appease everyone. And if both sides of the House seem generally unhappy with the bill, that is probably the closest thing to bipartisan that you're going to see. And that's kind of where we're at today, because there are some even on the Republican side, they're not happy about it, but they knew they had to pass it based on certain things that were there, and definitely on the deficit and the spending that was there. We didn't get the cuts the way that many in the party wanted to, but they knew they had to get this bill done. And then on the Democratic side, obviously with the deficit and the cuts in Medicaid and in some of the provisions that they feel are more business friendly and less friendly to the lower income American, they're also causing concern about that. But again, there were pieces in there that actually did help those in the lower income if they're working overtime or collecting tips, because those things made it in. Those were part of the campaign promise. You knew those were going to be in there. So just a lot of things going on around that bill. Stay tuned. We're going to have a webinar on this next week where it's going to go a little deeper. I don't think 1 hour could do it justice ever, but as things continue to progress, I think it's going to be really important. One of the things that we talk about is how tax research is being done and how you are going to collect your information on this bill and how you're going to communicate it with your client and where you're going to get it from. I was on a call yesterday with the CEO of Blue Jay, who is one of our partners, preferred partners with CPA.com. And we were talking about, we're going to have him on the town hall today to talk about it, because he talked about the fact that when you look at how tax information was collected, the tax bill would get consumed by these tax research providers, and they would bring a bunch of people into a room and they'd start going line by line through the bill to be able to say, okay, this is what's in law, this is what's going to change the tax code, these are the different pieces we need to make. That was right up until 2017, the last major tax law change that we've had. Now you look at today and you look at what technology has available to it and where things are going to be. They expect the code and the anticipation of what will be final in the code to happen much faster. And they're going to be able to utilize, generative AI and AI tools to be able to collect that data. And now they're going to be in verification rather than writing it piece by piece. And so they are expecting to get it out faster. We still have time before that happens, but it'll be interesting how that changes, how your firm does it, and what you can be talking to your clients about and what that looks like, very specifically into pieces of the industries in which they serve. So that is plenty to talk about HR1 and where that's going. Other changes in the administration. Billy Long is now in place. He is now working at the IRS. He's been fairly quiet these days, and they are talking about how they're going to implement. But I will tell you that Treasury is very actively engaged. Mike Falkender, who was the acting commissioner before Billy was confirmed, Mike is now back at Treasury, but still very much involved in how this implementation is going to happen. For those who don't remember, Mike Falkender was undersecretary to Mnuchin during the PPP days, and somebody that we were connected with. I personally was connected, still at AICPA at the time, along with Eric Auskerson, as we started our town halls, and we got connected to Mike, who was basically writing the PPP rules as we were going along, and we stayed connected through him on part of that. So I'm hopeful that he stays connected in this. He's a really bright individual, and they're going to need help at the IRS, especially given a lot of the cuts that are there. So continue to watch that, watch what happens with that. Now, one of the things that wasn't in the bill that actually was removed from the House version had in there about the elimination of the PCAOB and rolling it back up into the SEC. And that was in there originally introduced, and the parliamentarian kicked it out saying, you know what, that's really not a pay for. There are no budgetary savings. Pretty accurate, to be honest. I mean, we were saying that all along because they would eliminate the PCOB. This $400 million in savings, which became loaded up to $800 million in savings that they anticipated from that, just wasn't a reality. And so that did get tossed out. And so I've had a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions inside the SEC and the PCOB. There's a little bit of friction there because Paul Atkins is chair of the SEC. He has been vocal that he would want to see the PCOB rolled up. Now that didn't happen legislatively, the question is, what are the next steps? And we are anticipating change at the PCOB. I don't think that would be unheard of. And that usually happens when there is a new administration that comes in. So, we're expecting some shakeup on the PCOB board. And then the question is, what else does the SEC do to limit the powers or change up the powers of the PCOB and bring some of that into the SEC. And there's ways for them to kind of squeeze out some of what PCOB does. SEC is really in charge of their budget, and so there is that piece of oversight there. My ultimate hope, and I have sitting in my inbox two media interviews that I'm being asked what our position is on PCOB and what the next steps are, and it not being rolled up to the SEC. And I've been vocal from day one. It doesn't matter who it is, whether PCOB remains or it gets rolled up into the SEC. Public company trust, public company oversight is absolutely necessary. We want to make sure that there's trust in the marketplace around it. There are pieces that we need to do to make sure that that happens. Enforcement needs to be there. Inspection is absolutely got to be there. And then standard setting differently than what standard setting may look like inside of private companies is still very likely. That said, do I think it could be better? I think it's a good time to look at it. It's 20 years old, PCOB, and this general oversight the way it happens today. Can we be looking at doing things differently? I was with the head of the UK counterpart, the Financial Reporting Commission, over in the UK last week, and we had some interesting conversations. He's brand new to the role, pretty brand new to the profession too, and he has hopes of partnering with the profession differently. I would hope that we could at some point have that type of dialogue here in the US as well, rather than it being punitive always. How do we make sure, because we both are striving for the same thing, we both want quality audits, we both want trust in the capital markets, so how do we make that happen? So we'll continue on with that. We'll continue to have those conversations. It's been pretty quiet, and the big focal point in DC has been around really just getting all of these things passed and implemented. As far as business outlook and where things are headed, tariffs continue to be a big topic of conversation. Just the other day, what was it, 12 countries now, new letters around tariffs that are going to be implemented by August 1st. The President Trump continues to use those as a negotiating tool, if you will, to work with these different countries. Does it create uncertainty for our clients? Absolutely. And I think, again, the best we could do is based on the information that we know. We have a tariff page on aicpa.org to be able to kind of follow along what tariffs are fact and what tariffs are potential future. And that's the best you can call them. But at this point in time, talking to our clients about what we factually know today, rather than what all the headlines say, becomes really important. And having those conversations and talking about supply chain management and what all that looks like and inventory management, those are all big pieces of the aspect. Again, great opportunities for the profession as we go forward. All right. I talked about trust in the capital markets, but it's trust in the overall profession. It's funny. I had a couple of conversations with some CEOs of firms, and we were talking about this quite a bit. And especially as advisory continues to grow in many of the firms, and maybe it's the old auditor in me, but I keep trying to talk to firms about the fact that we can't forget about where we came from, right? And the one consistent in every single state that we are licensed in here in the US, the one thing we are licensed for consistently is audit. And so when we think about the fact that that is what we are licensed to do, all the other things that we do, including tax, so tax is in some state board licensing, but not in all of them. But audit is. And, I've said time and again, audit is what has developed trust in the profession. So audit equals trust. That's what we are presented into the marketplace. And from that trust, we have been given permission to do all these other things that we do, including tax. And so we have to maintain that level of trust. We have to make sure that we are the ultimate assurers of whatever that may be. And when we start to talk about AI and AI's implication on the profession, Again, it's the same thing, is what can we provide assurances over inside the AI space as we go forward. We've seen it in cybersecurity. We have our SOC engagements that are out there, but maintaining that level of trust and making sure that we own trust in the business marketplace and providing that level of assurance. So our traditional services will continue to evolve. AI will be a big piece of that. And I have a slide that I use in longer presentations where I talk about the evolution of technology in the profession. And it goes all the way back to the 1930s, because in the 1930s, the big technological change that was going to affect the profession forever was the advent of the electronic calculator. Yep, many of us out there, we all learned on the 10 key. We learned how to foot schedule. Someone was just telling me about how, they had standardized people just to foot schedules in their firm when they first started. And then a year later, after the personal computer was put on everybody's desk and Excel, and we didn't have to do that anymore. Although I swear to God, in my early days, we had people and partners saying, off an Excel schedule, did you foot it? Because we can't trust the computer and being able to add it up correctly. So we were still doing that in the early days. Now I think we have a little more trust in that. So when you think about this and how technology has changed who we are. Spreadsheets were going to put us out of business. Personal computer was going to put us out of business. And then you fast forward in a blockchain was going to put us out of business. And now talking about AI and AI going to be putting us out of business as accountants. Now it's going to change the way we do things. There's no doubt. But it is also going to enhance and it's going to change how we do things with our members. If I look at even before the AI introduction, if I look at what our new associates are doing inside of our firms today versus what I was asked to do 30 years ago, the levels of success and what we are judging performance on in our new associate today is being able to come up to an assertion level on a particular account inside of a particular audit that we're working on. That's what we're asking a new associate to do today. Well, 30 years ago, what I was judged on is how well I could make copies and how well I could stuff envelopes for accounts receivable confirmations, right? And that became a big part of it. And even talking to someone 30 years ago, when they talk about what a staff accountant did before the personal computer and what a staff accountant did after, and a senior accountant, what they were doing then versus what they were doing, all of these things have continued to mature over time, and they will continue as we move on and on. And it is redefining what it is that the entry level professional is going to do versus what it was in years past. So that is that continued evolution. For us, leveraging both the CPA and the CGMA, one of the things that I learned coming back to the association after being gone for 5 years and being international, I said it was announced on October 15th or somewhere around there, 15th or 16th, that I was coming back starting January 1 as CEO of the association. The next day, I got on a plane. I flew to Singapore for our global conference of the association that I was still working for at that time. And I got over there and I'm like, you know what? Our international members aren't going to care much. They're not members of AICPA. They're members of their member body in their particular countries. It's going to be a snooze fest. They're really not going to care much about me taking this role. And then I was amazed at how many of them, number one, how the high regard they had for the AICPA brand. And then two, how they were still going to be a member of mine because they have their CGMA in the particular market. And what they do in their marketplace is they're providing outsourced accounting services. They call it something a little different, but they're providing that accounting support as a satellite branch of whatever larger company is doing business in the US, the UK, wherever else that may be. That is a big business line for them. And so having the CGMA and being part of that as part of their overall firm structure was really important. So to me, that helped define and validate the fact of us bringing AICP and Seaman together made a ton of sense back in 2011 when we started that, in 17 when we did the overall merger. And so as we do that, leveraging that as we go forward continues to be important. When we look at firm structures, can't help but to talk about, David, I love the upcoming session to talk about remaining independent. I used to be asked that question constantly. We had in my firm association, we had a number of firms that received private equity backing. In fact, we had the first firm ever that I'm aware of actually happened in the UK, and they were also a member of our association, and were one of the first and actually did their first kind of half flip while I was still there as CEO. And so I'd have a lot of firms, though, come up to me and ask me, you know what, can we remain independent? And I'd say, you can absolutely remain independent. There are two things you need to get right. You need to fix your governance, and you need to support your technology and make sure you have the right technology tools. And so I didn't say you needed to fix your technology, but I definitely said you need to fix your governance, because I can guarantee you governance is probably the primary issue that holds a lot of firms back from being able to maintain the fact that they want to remain independent. And a lot of that just kind of comes from where we grew up. We were all partnerships, and it was one partner, one vote, and that is not the way we can operate into the future. And many of the firms who have succeeded and have been successful to remain independent, they've created a board structure. They have a dedicated CEO whose sole purpose is running the business, strategy, all of those pieces as they go forward. And it's not about getting all the partners in a room to hash it out. It's human nature, and every one of our partners, you know what, they're fantastic people. But as they get within 5 years of retirement, they get a little greedy, right? They get a little more self-interest than firm interest, and it's all of us. We all do it, right? And I'm no exception to that. But having the right systems in place so that that can happen from a governance standpoint. Governance is focused on the firm, not the interests of the individual partners, if that's where we want to go. And so I think that's an important aspect that we have to define as we go forward. So a lot of that human capital, ton of human capital changes that we've seen. I briefly mentioned we're up over 20 states that have adopted some form of the new pathway, if not the old pathway, because many people have argued me, keep calling it a new pathway, but that's how I passed the exam, is bachelor's plus 2 years of experience plus the exam. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. That's how I passed too. I'm a bachelor's kid. There are 150-hour kids. There's bachelor kids out there as we talk about this as we go forward. And bottom line, you know what? I mean, we just need to make sure that mobility is going to happen, and that it is easy enough to go from state to state. We're not there yet. We're working hard to try and make that as easily as humanly possible on the firms, but we're going to have a lot of work to do. So,
Mark, I had a quick question pop up, and I thought maybe just kind of bring it. Eric Marchak, CEO of Beach Fleischman, you were starting to talk a little bit about alliances, private equity, and his question was, from your unique perspective, how is the disruption in the profession impacting accounting firm associations and accounting firms networks? Anything specific regarding PE-backed firms and their impact on association and networks? And would love to, hear your thoughts on that while we're talking about it, if you have
no,
any.
great, David. Thank you. Feel free to
Yeah,
interrupt me at any time, because
sure.
I'm already tired of hearing from myself. So I'm
It's great
happy
stuff,
to
though.
yeah, I'm happy to take questions. Yeah, I think overall, and pretty much, I mean, I've covered everything else. We could talk about this at
Yeah.
the end. So as I was CEO of an association, there's no doubt on my mind was the fact that we have these PE-backed firms. And for those that were, the consolidator, the firm, the anchor firm, if you will, that took the private equity money and was going to go out and consolidate and roll up all these other firms, I had to think and wonder, how do I continue a value proposition for that particular firm if and when they get too big? And are they going to, at some point, want to flip out on their own and create their own semblance of a network, especially if once you start buying up enough firms in your local marketplace, when do you start crossing borders? It's Grant Thornton is a great example of this already. So Grant US, private equity backed. Grant UK, Grant US tried really hard to bring UK into the fold, and it didn't happen. So Grant UK now is taking their own private equity money. Both of them are fighting over Germany. Which one's going to get Germany to fall in line with who they are? And so this expansion is going to go beyond borders. And that's where you have to start questioning where is the value of an association, an alliance, or a network that you may currently be in, and will those firms potentially outgrow it? I think they will. I think it'll be a continued challenge. We were fortunate in what we built, that we had a lot of commerce built into the system. And so for those, even for those largest of firms, there was a benefit to remaining, at least for now, until they start getting into it. But our UK firm at the time, they're already in 5 other countries since
Yeah.
they started on their own in that particular country, and there was some overlap with some of the member firms that were there. I think also talking about, you can't help but talk about the fact that CLA has already done it. Forvis Mazars, it's part of the strategy, and they've pulled out of the association that they were in to create their own. So this constant thinking about when do they get too big and what does that look like, and what becomes the next step for them, is going to continue to change the dynamic in that space.
And I know that we have Michael Horwitz on here as well, who runs the BDO Alliance. And I don't know, Michael, if you have any thoughts, on this question at the same time, just given your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, David. And Mark, I appreciate your comments. Alinea being a global organization, we're a just US based organization, so we don't have the issues that Mark mentioned relative, excuse me, to multiple countries. But in our small group of 250 or so US based firms, we've got probably 25 that are PE backed, and I mean, we lose firms when they're acquired by PE-backed and just traditional M&A. And we wish our members well, and if that's what they want to do. I do agree with Mark that there's, and you, David, there's plenty of room for independent firms in the United States and around the world. And I think associations do play a relevant role in helping firms remain independent. And if they want to be involved with different types of ownership, ESOP, private equity, there's a place for those folks in associations as well.
Mhm. Yeah, well
Yeah.
said, Michael.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up, and Eric, feel free to chime in if there's anything else you're looking for there. But happy to open it up to anybody else that has thoughts or questions. Mark, one thing top of mind for me, unless someone else has a thought or question, is I know a lot's come out around, kind of the National Pipeline Advisory Group, some of the work being done in terms of the recruiting side. I saw some stats, a little bit more not improvement, but enrollment in terms of those going into the profession. Didn't know if you had any thoughts or updates on the work being done there.
Absolutely. The after the announcement of me becoming CEO in the fall of 24, fall enrollments are up 12%. Spring enrollments of 25 are up 12%. You're welcome. I fixed the problem in my first 6 months, right? So, nah, we still have a long way to go. It is encouraging. A lot of that has more to do with the economy than it does anything else. And it is also, to be honest, you mentioned the National Pipeline Advisory Group. They've really done great work. But it's going to go beyond just, putting the bachelor's plus two as another option on licensure in there to be able to solve this problem. We've talked about starting salaries for a long time, making sure that the pipeline stays full, all of those pieces, telling a better story. This is the thing. I've personally mentored. I'm now down to 5 kids, but I was up to 8 kids, friends, kids who I convinced to get into accounting and to take accounting as their undergrad. And I stay in touch with them. And I said, if every one of our members convince one kid to go to school for accounting, imagine what the numbers would be. I remember back when I was with my firm and I talked to partners and I'd say, is this firm good enough for your kid? And they'd say, well, I talked my kid out of going into accounting. I said, well, that's problem number one. I mean, I think you've done okay in the profession. So, God forbid they follow in your footsteps, right? And I think us having a little bit of pride in that. But I asked that question. I said, we're in Buffalo. I'm recruiting on campus and I'm recruiting somebody else's kid. So tell me, is this good enough for your kid? Because I'm hiring somebody else's kid and we're in Buffalo. There's a good chance I actually know their parent. So I want to be able to look them in the eye and say, this is the right career for them. And I think it is. I think it is for every one of the kids that are out there. And I'm going to continue on that. And I want to see everybody else tell the same story. We have to be proud in ourselves. And if there's something wrong with the profession, fix it. Fix it inside your firm to make it happen. I know we talk about compression, and hopefully there's some pieces to that we could get through in a legislative fix around it. But that becomes more practice management than it really does around, what the due dates are. We all know that we have them. They come up every year, and how do we make it better for our people? So all of that said, NPEG has done a great job. The numbers are still, that brings us back to 2020 numbers, not 2002 numbers. And so we still have a long way to go to keep the pipeline, and there's a lot of competition out there today.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I'm going to open it up to anyone else. Give it a minute here. Questions, thoughts? Mark, one more question on my end, unless anyone else has one that comes up. Upskilling, reskilling, and just thinking about what that looks like going forward. I mean, you talked a little bit about AI and just kind of in the leadership space. I know that's a topic that's come up very much, lately. I'm not sure if you have any thoughts or seen things, starting to go in that direction about what we have to be thinking about as firm leaders today.
Yeah, and David, I wish I had a better answer because as a profession, I don't think we have it figured out yet. And I think we all need to start collaborating on this and thinking differently. The question has always been now, how do I get a new associate trained up differently when they used to roll up their sleeves and they used to get in there, they used to do the debits and credits, and now they're not doing that
Yeah.
anymore. They're not learning that in college anymore. So how do I get them with the base skills so that now, as they are doing an assertion level at the account level assertion that they're working on, that they actually understand what it is that they're doing. And we're not alone in this, by the way. All of
Yeah.
our clients have the same issue. If they're hiring at multiple levels in the finance department, that's part of, again, the kind of like the CGMA pathway that we talk about. But I was over in the UK over the last couple of weeks. I met with some of our top employers in the UK on the CGMA side. One was one of the big four, and they're in the CFO advisory space heavily in the UK, and then three other companies that are there. In every instance, every one of them said the hardest part I have is training our new associates on what to do when they don't have that base level knowledge because they didn't do the nuts and bolts when they entered here. That's already gone. That's been automated, or we've offshored it, or whatever it is. How do I get that knowledge into their brain to be able to do it? And we talked a little bit about whether it's simulation training or the like how do we think about training differently, that it's not going to be the on the job training and it's not going to be the classroom training. We need something else that's out there, and how are we going to be able to make that happen? And I keep talking about simulation. I fly a lot, as you can imagine. I have the unique benefit of being concierge key on American Airlines, and so the one benefit I've gotten out of it so far is an occasional nice note from a flight attendant. Anything else, I'm just like any other flyer, to be honest, and how they do things. And maybe they answer the phone a little faster for me. But on this one flight, I got this nice little note from the flight attendant. And the note said, I really want to thank you for your loyalty. I want to thank you for flying with us, and thank you for being on my first flight. And so as I was coming off the plane, she was standing there, and the pilot was standing next to her. And I said, "Oh my God, this was your first flight." I said, "Well, congratulations, you did a fantastic job." She said, "Thank you." And the pilot standing there says, "Yeah, it was my first flight too." Not what I wanted to hear, right? And obviously he was joking, but what other industries, what other professions can we look at? They're doing this now in the medical profession and in nursing, that they're doing kind of like this real-time learning, like it's on the job, but it's all through, VR headsets and all these different pieces that they're able to follow the routine and what happens. Our training is not going to be a 2 week orientation when they get into the firm anymore. It's probably going to take longer. But that said, we need to make that investment so that when they do get out in the field, they'll be ready. And I think, we're just not there yet. And I keep challenging the team, I keep challenging the firms of us trying to figure it out, because we do need to make that change.
I got one last question that came in through email, Mark, and I'm gonna just kind of generalize it, but ERC, what's the status of outstanding claims? What are you hearing? Anything in those regards?
It's been fairly quiet. David, if you have that person or you want me to share back, I'll have
Yeah.
to get to our DC team on it.
Okay.
It's been eerily quiet based on all the other activity that's going on. So fair question that I'll definitely follow up on and get
Okay.
somebody to answer that. But um,
Final
yeah.
thoughts for today?
Final thoughts. Why, I put this up just as a final. If you haven't heard about it, we're doing our Rise 2040 project, which is CPA Horizons. If you were familiar with that, we did that in 2011, looking out 15 years into the profession. That got us to 2025. Here we are. And so we are doing collaboration inside the state societies. We did it at our council meeting. SEMA did it at their council meeting. First time we could do this globally, to really talk about where the profession is going and really set a roadmap of how we're going to get there. And happy to do it, David, with these groups too. If you wanted to
Yeah.
have a facilitated session, we have our Leadership Academy grads are happy to do it in any type of communities that are out there to get their input into the system. We got a big repository that we're putting together, whether it's public accounting or management accounting or both. We are discerning between that, and we are putting all this together so that we can help with this and hopefully get that put into the firms being able to use that in their strategic planning process as well.
Yeah, great idea. Definitely interested. Let's keep talking about that.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for putting up with me for the last hour.
You did an awesome job, Mark. I appreciate everybody's attendance today. We'll be sure to follow up with Mark's email with any additional questions, the PowerPoint as well. You'll see an email from me coming out early next week around winning ways in the reunion. Hope to see everybody there. In the meantime, have a great rest of your week, rest of your summer, until our next check-in here in about 2 months from now. As an FYI, I did include in everybody's email, we are featuring next week a webinar next Thursday with the CEO of James Moore and the Chief Growth Officer of James Moore on how they've built a digital first culture in their firm, in terms of driving revenue, in terms of driving transformation, and how partners and subject matter experts in all of their industries and niches are leveraging this. So everybody here is invited to that. It's part of our digital community series, but I've opened that up because I think it's such a great topic given where we get to spend our time. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone.